Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope you're doing well. So on this day we're in the garden and we're just at the beginning of May. So this is kind of a quick garden tour for May, as well as repotting some plants and just getting out there on a really nice day. So I really hope you enjoy, and the updates in the garden are doing really well. If you haven't been here before, I think this is my 4th year of gardening. I think I started in 2022, so kind of just after COVID times, and I'm 24. I live in England, so we have generally not the best weather, but there's still lots of things we can grow, so come along. So firstly, in the greenhouse we have this kiwi plant that's doing quite well. It looks like a few of its leaves were bitten, but other than that it's doing quite well. It's a bit wonky, it's my bad. The stick's not quite in straight, but that's fine. Then we have some seedlings coming up in the seed tower, and some cells don't have anything coming up yet. So whatever type this is clearly coming up, and then this type isn't, and then this type seemingly is. I can see one around there, and then so it's this type, and then this type isn't. So I'll have to reseed those at some point. And then my strawberries are doing the best they can. They've kind of been not well taken care of, so maybe I'll get to that today, weed them and top them up with some compost. Let's see. Then coming outside, my blueberry plant's doing super well. It has lots of flowers coming on. That's some chives down there, they're doing fine. And my raspberry plant is recovering after the storm. Okay. This is where I've seeded stuff, so you can see all the peas coming along at the back, which is really good. This one's attaching to the trellis, which is good. And then these are lettuces coming up, and these are possibly carrots coming up. And these, that's for the peas. That's for these little, I'm not sure what they are. And then the rest is lettuce. In this bed, we have, these are spring onions coming up here. So we have a whole line of spring onions and then a whole nother line of spring onions. And here, I think we planted carrots. I think these are the carrots coming up here. There are some weeds too. I don't want to pick too many out because I don't want to accidentally pick out the seedlings. So I'm going to leave most of them for now. And further up we have, these are something. I think those are coriander. I'm not sure what's planted here. Then over here, I think I planted lettuce, but I don't know for sure whether, I mean, this looks like it might be a little lettuce coming up. This is obviously a big lettuce, it's doing quite well. And then at the back I planted sunflowers and I can't see any of those coming up, so I might need to replant those. The same back here I planted sunflowers at the back and I'm not seeing any sign. And then I think I planted carrots there. So. And then lastly out here I planted some peas and beans at the back of this bed. And we do have signs now. I thought we weren't going to have any come up, but we have a pea here. This is a bean that's clearly been eaten out the ground. This is another pea. This is a bean plant coming up and a pea. These are all sugar snap peas. Bean, pea, another bean, a pea, and we've got some more beans down there. So I have soaked some more, so I will plant some more. So like maybe a succession plant. But actually some have come out which I didn't expect. So I'm just gonna get into it now. So one of the first things I do on this day, sorry, is create like my own kind of potting mix, because I was running low on compost and I didn't want to go to the store to get compost. So what I did is I had some soil from last year in this blue pot, and I mixed all the compost I did have left into that pot as well, and then I'm adding some chicken manure pellets there as well, because the soil has been used like once, twice through a plant, so there's no nutrients left in it. So I just wanted to add a handful or two of nutrients into this mix as well, so that the plants do really well. I'm enjoying using these chicken manure pellets. It's my first year using them, but I'm finding them really easy to kind of add into things, top up the beds with, and they really seem to be helping the plants so far. I was worried I maybe added too many, but my plants definitely aren't suffering. They seem to be doing really well. So I think I added just the right amount. And then I'm just going to mix it all nice and through. You can see it looks quite healthy in there. And I like to save my soil from my plant pots each year and put it into a bucket or two. I already used a bunch that I already had in the other bed. I just topped up one of the beds with some of it. So this is some that I had left over in a different bucket. These are all Roma. I want to get them pretty big pots because they're in really small pots right now. And I think they'll grow pretty quickly. I'm just looking for my pot. So as I repot these tomatoes, I pull off their baby leaves, so these like seedling leaves that they come out the seed with, and I tried to fill up to where those leaves are. This helps them create better roots. and it makes them a bit more secure. So I think this was at right end of April, beginning of May when I filmed this, and since then the plants are doing really well. The variety I'm repotting here at the moment are Roma tomatoes, and they're some of my favourite to grow. I think I only started growing them last year, but they turned out really well, and they're relatively fast growing. That's snapped in half. I don't know if that's going to work. I'm just going to plant the whole thing down to there. So if you couldn't hear me here, what I'm saying is I accidentally snapped the stem of the tomato in half on this one, and so I just buried it a bit deeper, and at first I thought it wouldn't survive, but it actually has survived and it's doing quite well now. So it just shows plants really do want to live. I think I'm just going to kill this one because it's not. So the benefit of planting way too many tomato plants is that you don't have to make all of them survive, and that one was a very small seedling, so I actually had a little bit of an experiment that I then created with a couple of them that were just way too small. So you'll see that in a bit. But I always plant way too many tomatoes, and I usually gift some of them. I tried not to plant too many this year, and I still currently have 40 tomato plants, which is way too many, so I will gift lots of them to people I know. So when I got towards the bottom of this bucket, I started to realise that most of it was just the soil. There wasn't much compost mixer, and there wasn't many nutrients in there. I couldn't see much of the chicken manure mixer. So I do decide to go ahead and mix a little bit more of the chicken manure pellets into this bottom part, just because I don't want it to be really lacking in nutrients, and tomato plants are quite heavy feeders anyway. So I just add a teeny bit more. Again, I definitely am not a gardening expert, and I don't know whether this was too much or too little, but I've found that the plants are doing really well now, and they don't seem to have struggled since they're repotting, so I think it worked out fine. If you're wondering why I'm rubbing the pots on the floor, it's because they're covered in cobwebs. I actually cleaned them all off not that long ago, but still covered in cobwebs because they're in a greenhouse, and obviously the spiders can get in, so I just wash and wipe off the cobwebs. the plants are staying in the greenhouse now anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So as I got towards finishing repotting a bunch of these tomatoes, I had two very small seedling plants. Well, one I don't even think had its first true leaf, and one of them had two true leaves. And so I put them in this, like I put them to the side, and I decided to do an experiment where I'm going to actually put them in the outside bed. So I think this was right at the end of April or the beginning of May, which is too early to put tomato plants outside in England at that point, but, oh, that's what I've been told. But I wanted to see whether that was right, whether they would succeed or fail. And then the rest in the pots were going in the greenhouse, and I had a bunch that I took back inside just in case the ones in the greenhouse had a problem overnight or in the next 2 nights, and when they were okay I decided to move the rest into the greenhouse. So you can see we used all that soil. Preferably you don't actually want to repot your plants on a day that's really warm, like it was that day, but it was the time that I had available, so it was the time that I used. But really, a more shady day is more preferred, I believe, for repotting plants. And when I was watering these ones, I did think to myself I shouldn't be watering onto their leaves, I should be watering into the pots. Or maybe it didn't enter my head until after. But I think I do realise at one point and then start just watering into my pots. I do have a bunch of tags left over from last year, so I went through that pot trying to find tags to match all of the plants for the variety. So I kept them all in separate piles for each variety, and then I went through and tagged them. And then some of them I was taking inside, some I was putting in the greenhouse, just to check that the greenhouse was safe at that point. So I'm just making 2 separate piles. So after I did that, I'm taking the 2 seedlings that I had that I didn't want to repot necessarily, but I wanted to see whether they could survive, so this is the first one. I think I accidentally realised that I planted both of them here by accident, and then I have to pull one of them out. But I'm just planting them into this bed. And I just want to see whether they survive outside. I went back out recently and I can't see them anymore, so I'm pretty sure they didn't survive. So definitely don't plant your tomatoes outside late April, early May in England. If I were you, I would wait until a little bit longer. Obviously they were both fragile plants anyway because they're really teeny tiny seedlings, but I think just a rule of thumb, I would wait until really late to late May is what I'm attempting to do this year. Wait it out to plant the tomatoes outside. It's hard though because they grow really quickly in the greenhouse and they get really big, and it's hard to manage to hold out to plant them outside. Either way though, I thought it was a really fun experiment to do, and I really enjoyed kind of checking and seeing whether they would survive. And you know what? They added extra nutrients to the bed. It's not a big deal that these ones died because, like I say, I still have 40 tomato plants, so I'm definitely not going to hopefully run out unless they all die outside. That would be a nightmare. And these are the ones in the greenhouse. And these are the ones that I put indoors. So the next day, the ones in the greenhouse seem to be doing well as well, so I think I'm going to move them all into the greenhouse. Let me get off those leaves. This one's a bit floppy, but I think it was floppy anyway. So far this bed doesn't really have anything in it. So I have a bunch of seeds that I'm going to plant in it. So I have lettuce, rosemary, Romanesco for cauliflower, thyme, savoy cabbage, sage and kale. And I'm going to alternate the herbs between them to prevent pests. So this is the next day, and I decided to come out. So I have some carrots already planted in this bed, but that's all I have planted in this bed. So I really wanted to get some more things planted into here, because everywhere else I've basically got stuff planted. So I've been seeding most things straight into the ground this year. I don't usually do that, but it feels way more relaxing and I feel less pressure than trying to keep all the seedlings indoors and then move them into repotting them and then putting them outdoors. This is easier for me this year. So I'm really glad I decided to do this because actually it's working out really well so far, and I just overseed. So I'm just making a trench here. And the first one we're planting is kale, which you can sow out there's April and May. Then they seed in a bed 1.5 centimeters deep into finely prepared moist soil, 45 centimeters between rows. Not too generously. Who knows if they'll work? They're quite old seeds. Oops. So I always put a stick in for wherever I've planted stuff, just so I remember that there is stuff planted there. I don't label it because usually as soon as it comes through the ground I can pretty much tell what it is, and especially once it gets its true leaves I usually know what it is. Plus I have these videos to look back on to remember what I planted there. And my labels would just break because they're old, so if I put them outdoors they would definitely just snap off like instantly in the wind. So maybe if I had some of those nice wooden ones or ceramic ones, that would be a good option. I also just plant a bit chaotically. Well, I don't usually, but this year especially I've been planting a bit chaotically, so it doesn't really matter what's planted where. I do check companion plants before I plant things. That's it. And that's why I planted the herbs intertwined with the kale and cauliflower and everything on the brassicas, I think they're called, because I don't want them to get the flies and the pests, and apparently the herbs planted between helps prevent those pests because it's harder to, I guess, to smell the plants. So we'll see whether that works or not, but I actually had a bunch of volunteer coriander I saw come up in this bed too, so I think we're set for herbs. So I planted all those seeds, like I said, and you can see the sticks where they're all planted, and then I'm just watering them in really well. We have a bunch of buttercups coming up in the garden this year, and I was just wondering, is England the only place where you put buttercups under your chin and ask whether people like butter? I don't know. So here I'm just sorting the strawberries. So here is the after, all weeded and added compost. And the last thing I managed to get to over these 2 days is planting some oregano in this pot outside. I had dill and or chives even in the other one, and then I thought I'd plant oregano in this one. I never have much luck with oregano coming up, but I know that it's pretty simple to come up. I mean, for other people, clearly not for me. Anyway, so I'm just topping the pot up with some compost and adding some seeds to the top, and then I'll water that in as well. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any advice for me, it's always welcome, so leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye!